picture's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Well, apparently, in my world, January was a bail-a-thon. I have 11 bails to tell you about. It's January 24th. I don't think there will be any more this month. So I figured I'd get my bail wrap-up out of the way. For those of you that saw I think it was my January 1st video, the one where I said I couldn't wait till Friday reads because I was so excited to be starting a bunch of new books, and what a wonderful, free, and open feeling that was. That remains true, but I bailed on quite a lot of those and quite a few more this month for a variety of reasons. Sometimes the books just weren't for me. Sometimes they just went south during the reading. There's a way of thinking that would say that those are two sides of the same coin, and for us, obviously for some readers who the books are for, they wouldn't have felt like they were going south, but they certainly, some of them did. There's one or two, one in particular I think that I would just say was a really shitty book, but I think only one this time that I would be that vehement about. So my first bail of the year, and of the month, was this one, Geek Loved by Catherine Dunn. I raved about the first chapter on that video, and the second chapter I didn't like at all. So this is a story about a circus family where the parents do medical and drug experiments on the mother while she's pregnant so that she will give birth to freak children who can be live acts in the show. And despite that really weird premise, I found the first chapter quite emotionally compelling, and it just showed the family and how close they were, and they were all really physically abnormal children. But the second chapter went far ahead into the future, where the mother and two children lived in the same apartment building, but one of the children, at least, I think the narrator of that chapter, was pretending not to know the mother. So there was no human warmth at all in that second chapter, and I just thought, this is a really strange book with very unusual characters, and then I didn't stick around to see how long that continued, but the present of the story, there's no human warmth between these people. No. Can't do it, won't do it, won't do it. Too weird for me. Just not my cup of tea. I'm not geeky enough. I don't get a chance to say that very often. My second bail of the year, I believe, was a book-length essay by Valeria Lucelli, a Mexican writer, called Tell Me How It Ends, an essay in 40 questions. And I think this was mostly a case of I was doing it on audio. And actually, the audio narrator was the narrator of one of my favorite audiobook experiences, The Portable Veblen. Her name, I believe, is Lawrence Bouvard, but she is not a Hispanic person, and she read it in a very straight American accent, and it did not fit the material at all. Plus, it was really hard to listen to an essay without the benefit of any print, and I don't think I really like the personal essay as a form at this stage of my reading life, so for all those reasons, I just got more and more distant from it and quit. Might try it again in print form. Next, it was a audio-text combo, where I had the novel, A Girl is a Half-Formed Thing by Amar McBride, and I had the luscious audio narrated by the author in her incredible, she's Irish, right? I guess she was born in Liverpool to Northern Irish parents, so I thought her accent was Irish, but I'll let others correct me. But it was lusciously narrated. As you probably know, the narrative voice is very grammar-free and a kind of sentence fragment after sentence fragment. Many people who didn't like this book didn't like it because they found it hard to follow. I found it very easy to follow, but I think that was because I was listening and reading at the same time. That was a joyful experience for me. But what turned me off very violently was about a third of the way through, when the narrator, who's a young girl at the beginning, has become a teenager, and that grammar-free, fragmentary narrative voice did not change at all. And so at that point, I thought this made sense as a 5-year-old or 7-year-old, but as a 15-year-old, it's pointless, and it's a gimmick, and I'm angry, and I quit. And that's what happened. other very well-read people didn't have that problem, but I very much did. So I quit in a huff because I thought this is just stupid. That one bit the dust. One of my most surprising bails was a novel by Penelope Fitzgerald. It had a low rating on Goodreads, but I very much enjoyed her Booker Prize winning Offshore about a year ago. This one was called The Bookshop, and it was about a woman in a British town setting up a bookshop, and many of the people in the town are dead set against her opening a bookshop. They've never had one, and why would they ever want one? And they're not very friendly to her, and she feels thwarted. But I thought the characters and the story was kept so small, it didn't come alive at all for me. So I think I read about 40%, and I just was bored out of my tree. I have never read a book about a bookshop or a book-themed novel that didn't suck in my life. Many people come to me with 84 Charing Cross Road. I saw the movie. I have a feeling I would hate that book too, but I haven't read that one, so the ones I've read, haven't been able to finish a one or didn't enjoy them. Even Penelope Fitzgerald was cursed. You would think it would be the easiest topic in the world for a novelist to go to town with, but all of the ones I've ever tried have been just crap, and this was crap too. So the next one was a kind of a holdover on audio from December. It's an African-American novel called Queen Sugar by Natalie Bazile. And it's about an African-American woman. I think she lived in California, but her dad dies and he had left her a sugarcane farm in Louisiana. So she moves down to the old family home to start running her dad's sugarcane farm with her teenage daughter. And I thought the characters were interesting and the writing was a little bit overwritten, but I was willing to stick it out because it was really well narrated on audio. But by 40%, 35%, I don't remember exactly where I bailed, but I certainly gave it a fair shot. I was still waiting for the story to start. It was all this world building and filling out of characters, but nothing was happening. I mean, her brother was also coming down, but it was just going on, and she was looking for somebody to help her manage the farm, and it was just ponderous. So I refused to wait anymore, and I bailed. I really had no business even trying, but I'm still really glad that I tried this next one. This one was for Russell of Ink and Paper Blogs channel's book club, The Changeling by Victor Laval. It's American, and he's African-American, actually. And it was described kind of as a literary sci-fi, and I don't like sci-fi because I don't like genre fiction. But it's good for me to try every once in a while, to just kind of try. You never know, right? So it was available to me on that short-lived audio book service I was subscribed to, TuneIn. So I wasn't out anything to try it. I loved the audio narration, and it was the author narrating his own book, which you don't get very much in audiobook land. The writing was good, the audio narration was great, and the story was quite compelling. But it's a story about a changeling. So as soon as the story got to the part where it was where the kid started changing or whatever, and the characters just started getting so weird in that way that I hate about genre fiction, where the story just got twisted and turned in a way that makes sense within the genre with which it was written, but doesn't make sense to me as a reader of literary fiction. And that's what I hate about all genre fiction. It twists in really deeply, deeply unsatisfying ways for me. So as soon as the changeling stuff started happening, it was getting all weird and eerie, and the mother was acting weird, and her character just didn't make any sense to me at all. I was like, ooh! My gorge just rises, and it doesn't matter whether it's a mystery novel, a sci-fi novel, a horror novel, anything. As soon as the story gets warped because of genre, I'm out of there. It was good for me to try it. And sorry, Russell, but please stay tuned for my actual January wrap-up, because another of your recommendations has been going much more positively. I'm still reading it and very much enjoying it, but that says more about me as a reader. It's just, I know what I like. It's good for me to try things outside my comfort zone every once in a while. The next was a book that came to my attention, or brought to my attention in a deep way, from a page 112 tag, but didn't end up going very well the Irish postmodernist novel The Third Policeman by Flann O'Brien. I really enjoyed the page 112 that I did from that. It was a blind one. Can't remember now who sent it to me. The writing was good. The audio narration of this lovely Irish narrator. The story was twisty and weird from the beginning. It was audio, plus I was following along an ebook, so it was a twisty story, but I stayed with it. But the more that it twisted, by around 35%, I thought, I don't have any emotional connection other than there was a few characters, the police detectives, that were really funny, so I was chortling at them, but this story was going like this, and I didn't have any emotional investment in any of that, and most postmodernist fiction, that's what it's like for me, so no, it wasn't for me. Just me. It's kind of got a cult following, but I don't know anybody, when I looked at Goodreads, none of my bookish friends had read it or whatever, so it's kind of not a book that very many people are reading these days, and it wasn't for me. This, I bailed on the first or second page of chapter 2, and boy, I'll never get those 17 minutes back that I wasted on this piece of used toilet paper. I have more thoughts in a kind of a review video if you want to check it out, but you don't need to know any more about this. This one surprised me a little bit, but I also do like to buck the trend, but just in a very honest way. The book, the new release, 3 Things About Elsie by Joanna Cannon, her second novel after The Trouble with Goats and Sheep, didn't work for me at all, and I didn't like it. It started out really good, the audio narration was good, but again, after about 30% I realized this is just a mystery. It's just a mystery. I don't care about mysteries. It's a book that many people will really enjoy, but to me it was a light piece of genre fluff. I wanted to join Mel's Around the World book club, Mel's Bookland Adventure, and this month they were doing the novel by a Bangladeshi British novelist, Tamima Anam, called A Golden Age, and I started it on audio, loved the audio narration, but it wasn't good enough. It was a debut. It's the first book I've ever tried to read or started to read from Bangladesh, and I was very interested in learning about Bangladesh, but not from a second-rate debut novel. The characters were paper thin, and I thought even the action scenes, the dramatic kind of political scenes that were rendered, that were narrated, were poorly done. So I kept comparing it in my mind to some of the books that I've loved so much that took the politics and social change of a slice of time in a country that was unfamiliar to me, that were just stellar 5-star reads. Do Not Say We Have Nothing by Madeleine Tien, The Year of the Runaways by Sunjiv Sahota, A Fine Balance by Rohinton Mistry. Each of those books showed a world in rapid and violent political, social change with a crispness that was so incredibly vivid, and by all of those comparisons I thought that A Golden Age fell very, very flat, and I wasn't interested in continuing. There was a certain amount of literary talent that made me think, well, I would try another of her books. There's certainly room for her to grow, but no, this was not well written enough for me to spend several more hours of my valuable audio listening time to finish. And the last book, I hope it's the last book that I will be bailing on, that I will have bailed on in January of 2018, was quite a disappointment because I did read half of it, and I had predicted it as a 5-star read. Welcome to Lagos by Chibundu Onozo. Started out so good, I would say that just considering it as a piece of prose, her writing rivaled Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's for the longest time, but this is where the whole page 112 thing really bears fruit, because I thought the writing went downhill. The farther I got into it, it wasn't as crisp, it wasn't as alive, but I was still enjoying the story. It was about a motley crew of Nigerians that all kind of find themselves in a group on their way to Lagos, and how they fare in this crazy city of Lagos. I think this cover, which I love, doesn't do justice to the chaos that is Lagos as it's described here. And the title, Welcome to Lagos, I think is taken from a BBC documentary by the same title that was very controversial for Nigerians in the way it negatively portrayed the city. This suffered And it just turned very sharply just before the 50% mark. But this suffered from the opposite problem. There was a utterly hokey turn in the plot that just made the characters that she had been building disintegrate into stick men and women. And it became like a story you'd hear at Sunday school. I will do a little bit of a spoilery, so fast forward a minute, but I'm going to do it in as non-spoilery a way, and just say this group of ragtag people, there's a couple from the military, there's one rebel, and another woman who's left her husband, and another poor young woman, and they accidentally capture a bad guy, a criminal who's wanted, and he's carrying bags of money. And they, quote-unquote, wrestle with what to do with the money. And the plot at that point got so ridiculously hokey. There was no moral wrestling. There was no conflict between them. Even the quote-unquote bad guy within their group, the young rebel, he said, I want us to keep it. And they talked him down within a half a paragraph. And I just thought, this is ridiculous. This is bad characterization. I couldn't stand it. It just became like this little Bible story. It's like, give me a break. So I quit. I had been quite impressed by it up to that point, but that kind of thing turns me off quicker than anything. I would try another novel by Onuzo. I think she has definitely some talent, but what was this? A Bible novel? Christian novel? It was so good. I couldn't believe how Pollyannish the plot got. It almost made me sick, so too bad. I had really high hopes for that. So, those are my bails. I believe this month's Bail-a-thon elevates me. I've long called myself the Queen of Bailing, but I now hereby appoint myself the Empress of Bailing. And I feel pretty good about it. It's a little disappointing that I've wasted a lot of time reading books that weren't for me, and that some that kind of turned in a negative way, in a disappointing way, so far into them, so that I think I'm not going to have finished reading as many books this month as I have bailed upon, and that's a disappointing month to a certain extent. But I am reading several books, a lot of books, and on audio, and some poetry, and it's all really wonderful. So I'm having a great time. Stuff happens. So that's my bail report. Of the ones that I've talked about, I might try Geek Love again, but I doubt it, and none of the others I would try again. I had very definite opinions on them, and I don't think that I would ever change my mind. So how about you? Have you read or bailed on any of these? Please give me your thoughts. And that's all I have for now. Thanks for watching.